Hey guys, Dr. Pete here. We're talking about maximising whole school well-being for teaching and learning. And this is one of those big four support systems inside a flourishing school. But what exactly is well-being? You know, when we think about well-being, you can see a definition here. There's so many different elements to consider. And the answer to what is well-being, well, as you can see, it really does depend on the context. Let me explain what I mean. You can see a construction worker and an office worker on the screen. Well, well-being for them has a difference according to context, strength and conditioning, manual handling versus, multitasking, time management, etc. We take that same idea with schools and say, well, what do we mean by well-being? And we're thinking about students and well-being for learning and teachers and support staff well-being for teaching. And that takes us to our model of how we maximize whole school well-being, two interconnected systems for teaching and for learning. Let's dig into the first one now. Let's talk about students and well-being for learning. We use that beautiful research by Albert Bandura and his colleagues that said there's these four underlying things that need to go right to maximize well-being for learning. Well-being for learning fluctuates, its efficacy, capacity, it moves around a lot. So a pulse system is a great way to do that. Measure it regularly and lift it up and maximize it. Let's talk about what that means. So in Wellbeing for Learning, we're using regular pulse surveys to check in on the fluctuations of student well-being. We're using class scorecards and teaching and learning reports to engage in the journey of well-being. And in doing so, we can see the data about how student well-being fluctuates over the year and differences between age cohorts. But to really boost well-being, we need to use reflection tools, classroom booster activities, and then you can see the data on the screen now showing just how much you can really improve well-being for learning. And our last shot here shows the lift in academic achievement accordingly. So that's how we can maximize well-being for learning. But what's interesting about that is that well-being for learning, as you can see on the screen now, and well-being for teaching interact. So if we really want to maximize well-being for learning, we need to return to our model now, and we need to focus in on how do we also maximize well-being for teaching. That takes us to, again, the concept of collective teacher efficacy, a slightly different theory with some slightly different measures about what constitutes collective teacher efficacy. And again, capacity efficacy, look, it fluctuates as we know. So again, a bit of a pulse system is a great way to measure, manage, and maximize that. Let's take a look at that. And well-being for teaching, of course, regular pulse surveys, again, scorecards for teaching teams and the whole of school to look at the collective efficacy trend. And you can see well-being for teaching fluctuates across the year. But remember, we want to maximize it, so we need to use targeted 10-minute team boosters, debrief protocols, a bit of a toolkit there. And now you can see what we call the buffer effect, or the blue line on the screen, how we lift up well-being for teaching. And of course, there's plenty of evidence to show that increased well-being for teaching improves the outcomes in students. And so that's how we maximize well-being for teaching. Let's bring this together now. We're trying to maximize whole school well-being. And remember, that's one of our big four support systems in a flourishing school. And we've shown you here how you can have a system of well-being for teaching and well-being for learning and how they interact. And when we get that right, all staff and students can flourish. So until next time, bye for now.